Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are embarking on a journey that I think is going to resonate with anyone who has ever booked a vacation rental, stared at a map and wondered, what exactly am I standing on?
Chuckles, the what's under my feet question.
Exactly. We're starting with something that feels incredibly modern, almost mundane listing for an apartment. And we are going to pull that loose thread until we unravel, about 600 years of history?
Sounds about right.
We have a stack of sources here that range from, high-end travel guides to 19th century architectural surveys, and even a noir crime novel that sets a very specific mood.
I love these kinds of dives. It's urban archaeology, but you don't need a shovel.
Right.
And you don't need a PhD in dirt. You just need to know where to look and, I guess, how to read the streets themselves.
Yeah.
So where are we starting today?
We are starting with a browser window. I was scrolling through some sources for Thessaloniki, Greece, specifically looking at accommodation listings, and I stumbled upon a rental apartment with a name that just completely stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, yeah. It's titled The Temple of PPG.
The Temple of PPG. That sounds kind of ominous.
Right.
Is it a cult headquarters? Or maybe some kind of, industrial complex. PPG sounds like an acronym for a chemical company.
It totally does. It sounds like something out of Indiana Jones or a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
Enter the Temple of PPG, but then you click on the listing, and the reality is, well, it's the definition of modern luxury.
Okay.
We are talking about a sleek, 95-square-meter apartment. It's got a 9.9 location score, flat-screen TVs in every room, Nespresso machines.
The full works.
The full works.
Yeah.
Balconies with sweeping panoramic city views.
Yeah.
It is designed from the ground up to be the ultimate urban sanctuary for the weary traveler.
Okay, so it's a high-end Airbnb. Temple is it's marketing fluff to make you feel special.
It's exactly that. It's branding. It's telling you this is your place of worship for relaxation. But here is the hook, and this is where our dive actually begins. PPG stands for Palaion Patron Germanou.
Ah, okay. The street name. That is the name of the street it's on.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at what that street actually is and what lies literally beneath the floorboards of that temple, the name becomes accidentally, profound.
How so?
Because this isn't just a place to sleep. This street is a vertical timeline. It's a slice of a city that has been burned down, conquered, rebuilt, and reimagined more times than, I think, almost any other city in Europe.
That is the specific beauty of Thessaloniki. It really is. It's a palimpsest.
That's the perfect word for it.
You cannot scratch the surface of a modern apartment building without hitting a Byzantine basement or an Ottoman foundation or, a Roman road. It's all there.
Precisely. So our mission today is to explore the Temple of PPG, but not the apartment with the Nespresso machine. We are going to explore the ground it sits on.
I like it.
We're going to go from this modern listing through a gritty crime novel set on the very same street, back to a legendary 1950s pastry shop that defined a generation, and finally, we're going to dig all the way down to the bedrock.
Which is what?
The hidden, resilient post-Byzantine churches that somehow survived centuries of Ottoman rule right in this very neighborhood.
It's a theme of survival, isn't it? That seems to be the core thread here.
It really is. It's about adaptation. It's about how people and buildings, how they shapeshift to survive in, often hostile environments. So let's unpack this layer by layer.
Let's do it.
First, let's set the scene with the modern vibe. We have this travel guide source for the Palaion Patron Germanou area. If you go there today, let's say you book this temple and you walk out the front door, what are you seeing?
Well, according to the travel guides, this is the coffee and shopping heart of the city. Absolutely. It's what you call the bourgeois center.
Okay.
It's described as having a unique aesthetic. It's warm, it's bustling, very European.
Right.
You are right next to the White Tower, which is, the city's main landmark. And you are just a stone's throw from Simiski Street, which is the major shopping artery.
The listing for the apartment actually highlights all of that. It talks about the proximity to high-end brands, the boutiques, the cafe culture.
It leans into it.
Totally. It paints this picture of a very affluent, very lively urban center. It's the place you go to see and be seen. It's shiny.
Yeah, it's the kind of place where you wear your best sunglasses.
Exact.
It's the social stratosphere of the city. It's where you go to consume and, enjoy the good life. But as you mentioned in the intro, there is a duality here.
A huge one.
There's an atmospheric turn when the sun goes down, or at least when you switch genres.
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets really interesting for me. We have a source here, a book titled Crime on Palaion Patron Germanou by a guy named Georgios Polirakis.
A murder mystery set on the exact same street.
Yes. And the description is fantastic because it completely flips the script from the sunny tourist reviews.
How so?
The book describes the strait plunged into darkness near dawn. It creates this very noir atmosphere. There's a military doctor, a guy named Angelos Manisis, and he's standing on his balcony. Maybe even a balcony, just like the one in our temple of PPG, you know.
Watching the street below, that is a classic noir trope. The silent observer.
The classic. And he sees this mysterious silhouette of a man on the sidewalk. He gets this paranoid feeling, you know, that he's being watched.
Okay, so it's moody.
Very moody. And then he bumps into a woman near the elevator who looks exactly like Kim Novak in Vertigo.
Wow. That is a very specific vibe.
Isn't it?
It's Hitchcockian. It implies danger, seduction, hidden identities, the whole package.
It does. And then, seemingly moments later, a businessman living on the same floor is found brutally murdered in his bed.
So fiction uses this street as a backdrop for danger, for, as the book's blurb says, eroticism, and for mystery.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how the same 95 square meters can be a temple of relaxation in an Airbnb review and a cold-blooded crime scene in a novel.
It just shows the duality of the city, right? It's never just one thing. A street isn't just concrete. It's a canvas for whatever story we want to project onto it.
True.
But let's peel back another layer. Let's go back before the Airbnb, before the modern crime novel. Let's go to 1948.
The post-war era. This is a crucial time for Greece. The Civil War is just wrapping up. The city is trying to find its feet again after a really devastating decade.
Right. And on the corner of Samiski and Palaion Patron Germanos, essentially on the doorstep of our temple, there opened a place called Ikali.
Ah, yes. The legendary dairy pastry shop. Now, for those listening who might not know the Greek context, calling this a pastry shop feels like a massive undersell.
Oh, for sure.
This wasn't just a place to buy a croissant and leave.
No, it was an institution. It was a cultural anchor. The source describes it as the spot that galvanized a whole generation from the late 40s all the way through the 60s.
A whole generation. That's a big claim.
It is. But imagine this. You walk in and the sensory experience hits you immediately.
Okay, so what's on the menu? Give me the smells.
It's incredible comfort food, fresh milk, thick yogurt, rice pudding with a ton of salmon.
The classic.
Absolute classics. And they serve these Thessaloniki fried eggs in a little metal pan for brunch before brunch was even a concept in the West.
Right.
And in the afternoons, donuts with honey.
Traditional lukumades, fried dough and honey. That is the smell of happiness. I don't care who you are.
It absolutely is. But it wasn't just about the sugar rush. The clientele was a who's who of Thessaloniki.
So it was a C&B scene place, even then.
Totally. You had politicians plotting their next move, university professors debuting their theories, journalists hunting for scoops, but you also had the athletes.
It was a sports hub.
A huge sports hub. It was the pre-game meeting spot before everyone headed off to the stadiums to see PAOK or Eris or Iraklis. You have to imagine the smoke, the arguing, the newspapers rattling, the clatter of spoons. It was alive.
Just a buzzing social center.
But here's the detail that I absolutely loved. The basement.
What was in the basement?
They called it the Tomb of the Indian.
The Tomb of the Indian.
Yeah.
That is a very evocative and slightly bizarre name for a basement game room.
Isn't it? It was a game room inaugurated in the mid-50s by a newspaper publisher, of all people. It had pinball machines, foosball tables. It became this underground hive of activity for the younger crowd, while the professors argued politics and philosophy upstairs.
It sounds like it had a real community ecosystem.
Yeah.
Different layers of society occupying the same space.
For sure.
The intelligentsia upstairs,
Yeah.
the youth culture downstairs.
It did. And it had characters. There was this iconic waiter named Thanasis.
Oh, there's always an iconic waiter.
There has to be. The source describes him as simple but hyperactive. He was everywhere at once. But the quirk that made him a legend was that he insisted on speaking in Katharavousa.
Okay, we need to pause on that, Katharavousa. Can you explain to the listeners why a waiter speaking that is funny or, significant?
So Katharavousa is this formal, archaic version of Greek. It was created in the 19th century to, quote, purify the language from foreign influences.
Right, so it's the official language?
It was the language of the state, the law, the academics. Nobody actually spoke it at the dinner table. It was stiff. It was like speaking in legalese.
Right. It would be like going to a burger joint in New Jersey and having the waiter take your order in Shakespearean English. Hath thou decided upon the cheeseburger?
Exactly. It's that jarring. So you have this busy waiter, Thanasis, in a noisy pastry shop amidst clinking spoons and pinball machines, speaking like a 19th century academic while he manages the telephone traffic.
The telephone traffic.
Yeah, because back then, the shop phone was the community phone. People would get calls there.
That is a lovely detail. It anchors the place and time so perfectly. It shows the social friction of the era, the high language versus the street reality.
And you mentioned a rivalry.
Oh, yes. The Petalauda. That was the shop across the street.
Palaion means butterfly.
The butterfly. Yes. And the source says they were like communicating vessels. When Ikali filled up, the crowd just flowed over to Petalauda. They were separated only by the street Palaion Patron Germanou.
So this street has always been a place of social friction, of gathering, of noise and life. Whether it's shoppers today or politicians arguing in the 50s.
It seems to be its constant identity.
Exactly. But now I want to take a massive jump. We are going to leave the donuts and the pinball machines of the 1950s, and we are going to drop down into the deep past. Because the ground beneath the Temple of PPG has a much older, much harder story.
We are going back to the Ottoman conquest.
We're going back to 1430, the fall of Thessaloniki to the Ottomans.
This is a pivotal moment. The city hits its absolute lowest point. I mean, the sources describe it as being depopulated.
What does that actually mean, though? How many people are we talking about?
We are talking about a city that was once the second capital of the Byzantine Empire, a metropolis that rivaled Constantinople. And suddenly, after the siege and the sack, there were only a few thousand Christians left in the entire city.
A few thousand? That's hard to imagine considering how bustling it is today. A few thousand people is a village.
It was a ghost town compared to its glory days. It was a shell. And the landscape changed instantly. Most of the major churches, the big grand basilicas like the Acropoietos or the Rotunda, they're eventually converted into mosques.
So the skyline itself changes.
Completely. You would have seen minarets rising up across the skyline where bell towers used to be. The visual identity of the city shifted from cross to crescent almost overnight.
So what did the remaining Christians do? Where did they go? Did they just leave?
Many did, or they were enslaved. But those who stayed, they huddled. They formed these small enclaves around the few tiny churches that the Ottomans allowed them to keep.
Okay.
And interestingly, the main cluster was right in the area we were talking about, near the Camara, which is the Arch Galerius, and the Hippodrome, the exact neighborhood of our Temple of PPG.
So this wealthy, modern shopping district was once a survival enclave. A ghetto, essentially.
In a way, yes. It was the Christian quarter, but it wasn't wealthy then. It was a place of scarcity. And this scarcity of resources, this lack of space, it led to a fascinating architectural innovation.
Oh, yeah.
The source is called the three-hypostasis solution.
Three hypostasis. That sounds very theological. Hypostasis usually refers to the substance or reality of the Trinity. What does it mean in terms of bricks and mortar?
It's essentially architectural multitasking, born of necessity.
Architectural multitasking. I like that.
Because they had so few churches left, and they couldn't build new ones easily due to strict Ottoman restrictions on non-Muslim worship places, they had to make the existing structures work triple time.
So what do they do?
They built or modified churches to have 3 aisles, and each aisle was dedicated to a different saint or a different feast day.
So one building, but 3 altars, 3 churches in one, basically.
Correct. You might have the main aisle for the Virgin Mary, the north aisle for St. John the Baptist, and the south aisle for St. Nicholas. It allowed one building to serve the spiritual needs of 3 separate congregations or cults. It maximized their limited space.
That is ingenious. It's like the Swiss Army knife of churches. I have one room, but I need to celebrate 3 different festivals this week.
It really is, and it tells you so much about their mindset. They weren't just giving up, they were adapting. They were finding clever ways to keep their traditions alive in a very hostile environment.
They were innovating out of necessity.
Exactly. They couldn't go wide, they couldn't go high because the Ottomans forbade churches from being taller than mosques, so they went dense, they went internal.
So for a long time, things are difficult. The churches are small, they're hidden, cramping 3 saints into one room. But then we hit a turning point in the 19th century.
The Tanzimat reforms.
Right. We're looking at 1839 and 1856. These reforms seem to change everything in the source material. But why did they happen? Was the Sultan just feeling generous one day?
Not exactly. The Ottoman Empire was becoming the sick man of Europe. That was the phrase at the time.
Right, I've heard that.
It was losing territory, losing power, and facing internal rebellions from various ethnic groups. So, to survive, they needed to modernize, and crucially, they needed to keep the Western powers like Britain and France happy.
So it's geopolitics.
It's all geopolitics.
Yeah.
So they issued these decrees, the Hadi Sharif and the Hadi Humayun, to try and Europeanize the state, to show they were playing by the new rules.
What did that mean practically for the guy living on Palaion Patron Germanou Str?
It meant equality, at least on paper. It meant religious freedom for minorities. Suddenly, you didn't have to hide your church behind a high wall. You could repair old ones that were falling down without getting a special permit that cost a fortune.
You could even build new ones.
You could even build new ones without fearing that the authorities would shut you down or demand a massive bribe. It was a fundamental shift in the power dynamic.
And this triggered a construction boom.
A massive one. And it wasn't just the laws changing, it was the money. You had this rising class of wealthy Greek merchants, the bourgeoisie, who were making fortunes in trade, dealing with Europe, shipping grain and cotton.
And they had money to spend.
They had money, and they wanted to show it off. They wanted to demonstrate their piety and their new social status. So they started funding these massive renovations of the humble, hidden churches.
So the churches we see today, the ones that are buried amongst the apartment buildings, they are largely the result of this 19th century bling era.
Exactly. They became taller, brighter, and filled with art that reflected this new confidence and wealth. They moved from survival mode to expression mode.
Let's dive into the specific monuments then, because we have 3 specific churches in our sources that are right in this neighborhood, and each one has some mind-blowing details. The first one is Nea Panagia,
The New Virgin, located at the corner of Dimitrios Gounaris and Metropolios.
The history here goes deep. I mean, really deep. It's built on the ruins of a 12th century monastery, and get this, the Byzantine hippodrome.
The racetrack.
Yes, the chariot racetrack. So you have horse races in the ancient times, then monks, then a fire, and then in 1727 they build this church.
A lot of history in one spot.
But the thing that blew my mind was the technology inside the walls, the acoustics.
Ah, yes. The clay pipes. This is a fascinating piece of lost engineering. It's brilliant.
Tell us about that, because when I read clay pipes, I think of plumbing. I think of drainage.
And that's a natural assumption. But no, this is sound engineering. They embedded these clay vessels or pipes into the masonry of the walls, underneath the plaster.
So you can't see them.
Can't see them. The open ends of the pipes would face into the sanctuary, often hidden behind the frescoes, or high up where you couldn't see them from the floor.
And what did they do? How did they work?
They acted as resonators. Think of blowing across the top of a glass bottle. It makes a sound. It resonates at a certain frequency. These pipes were tuned to amplify the priest's voice.
No way.
Yeah. When he was chanting in the sanctuary, these pipes would catch the sound waves, vibrate, and project the sound out into the main body of the church.
That is wild. It's like a built-in low-tech PA system from the 18th century.
That's a perfect way to describe it, and it shows a high level of sophistication. The source mentions that this same system was used in the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. This wasn't some local quirk.
So it's a known high-level technology of the time.
A very advanced technology. They weren't just stacking stones. They understood the physics of sound. They wanted the liturgy to be heard clearly, even without microphones. It speaks to a desire for the congregation to really engage with the service, not just watch it from afar.
And yet, despite that sophistication, they still had to be careful. The source talks about a hidden sanctuary.
Right. This goes back to the Ottoman restrictions. Even though they could build, they couldn't be too provocative, especially in 1727, which was before the big Tanzimat reforms.
So the rules were still tight.
Very tight. If you look at a standard church, the eastern wall usually has apses, those semicircular bulges sticking out the back where the altar is.
Right. You see that in almost every cathedral. It's the bump on the back of the building.
But Nea Panagia has extremely thick, straight walls at the back. It looks like a simple box from the outside.
Why?
To hide the apses inside the wall thickness. They carved the curves out of the inside of the masonry so the outside would remain flat and unthreatening to the Ottoman rulers.
That's genius.
It was a way of saying, nothing to see here, just a regular rectangular building.
Yeah.
While inside, the liturgy was fully Orthodox and the architecture was traditional.
Sneaky. I love it. It's camouflage. It's architectural stealth mode.
It absolutely is.
Now let's talk about the art, the frescoes. They were painted around 1730, but the source says they look much older. Why is that?
This is the humanist revival. The artists were consciously mimicking the Pansellino style from the 14th century.
Manuel Panselinos, the master of the Macedonian school of painting.
Exactly. One of the greats of the late Byzantine era. It was a nostalgia trip. They were looking back at the golden age of Byzantium before the fall and trying to recreate it. It's like, imagine if modern architects started building exclusively in Art Deco style because they missed the 1920s.
And make Byzantium great again. Artistic movement.
In a way, yes, it was a powerful assertion of identity. We are not just subjects of the Sultan. We are the heirs of Byzantium. This is our heritage.
And the imagery is striking, right?
Very. There is a Root of Jesse fresco, which shows the lineage of Christ, and a vision of St. Peter of Alexandria, which depicts Christ as a boy with a torn tunic.
That sounds incredibly specific. Why a torn tunic? What does that signify?
It symbolizes the schisms in the church, specifically the Arian heresy, the tearing of the fabric of faith. It's a very theological, intellectual image. It shows that this community wasn't just wealthy, they were educated. They understood the deep theology and history.
And we can't forget the layout, the gynecologist.
The women's gallery. It's a U-shaped balcony that wraps around the church, and it reminds us of the social separation of the time.
So men on the ground floor, women up on the balcony.
That's right. The women were upstairs observing while the men were below. It gives us a glimpse into the gender dynamics of the 18th century. The church wasn't just about worship, it was about social order.
Okay, let's move to the next monument. This one has my favorite name, Leo de Jutria, also known as the Rabbit Church.
La Gudiani, or in Turkish, Tavsan Manastiri, the Rabbit Monastery.
Please tell me there's a good story behind that name. You don't name a church after a rabbit for no reason.
There is a legend, and it's a classic of the genre. The story goes that a hunter was chasing a rabbit in this area, which was apparently wooded or overgrown at the time.
Okay.
The rabbit ran into a hole to escape. The hunter, determined, started digging to get the rabbit out, and instead of the rabbit, he found a miraculous icon of the Virgin Mary and a holy water spring, an agiasma.
The rabbit led him to the holy site. It's like a holy Alice in Wonderland.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is, the spring still exists. It's in the south chapel of the church today. You can still see it.
That is incredible. From a rabbit hole to a holy spring. Now, the structure itself was rebuilt in 1802 by a guy named Christos Georgiou, also known as Menexes.
And it follows that 3 hypostasis rule we talked about.
Still multitasking.
Still multitasking. It's dedicated to the life-giving spring, because of the rabbit water, obviously, but also to St. John the Theologian and St. Dionysius of Olympus. Again, maximizing the space.
But the art here is different from Neopanagia, right? It's not looking back to the 14th century anymore.
No, this is the 19th century now. We are post-French Revolution. We're in the age of Romanticism. We are seeing Western influences creeping in. The icons are Westernized.
How can you tell the difference? If I'm looking at an icon, what gives it away? What are the tells?
Look at the body language. In traditional Byzantine icons, figures are stiff, frontal, two-dimensional. They feel like they're outside of time. They don't have weight.
Right, very formal.
Very formal. But here, the figures are in motion. They are standing casually, maybe turned at a 3/4 angle. There's perspective. There's a narrative quality. They feel more human, less divine and distant.
The source mentions an icon of St. John the Theologian that sounds really unique in this regard.
Yes, it's a great example. In traditional icons, St. John usually just stands there holding a book, static, symbolic. But here, there's an angel literally hovering at his ear, whispering the gospel to him.
So it's an action scene.
It's an action scene. It's capturing a moment of inspiration. It's storytelling, not just portraiture. You can see the relationship between the divine and the human, the act of revelation happening in front of you.
It sounds much more dynamic, almost cinematic.
It reflects the changing times. The community was becoming more cosmopolitan, more exposed to European art trends through trade, and that filtered into the church. They weren't just looking back at Byzantium anymore. They were looking sideways at Europe. They were saying, we can allow some of this modernity in.
All right, monument number 3, Agios Athanasios. This is at Egnatia and Socrates.
The Beverly Hills of Christian Thessaloniki at the time.
Was it really?
It was the richest Christian quarter. This is where the big merchants lived, and this church was the center of it. But because it was so profitable, it was the subject of a massive legal battle.
A legal battle over a church.
For 300 years.
Get out of here. 3 centuries.
Ownership bounced between the Vladidan Monastery, the metropolis, which is like the archdiocese, and private individuals.
Why were they fighting over it? Was it spiritual prestige? Control of the parish?
No, it was cash. Pure and simple. The church wasn't just a place of worship. It was a real estate portfolio.
How so?
The church owned rental shops nearby. It had income from pilgrims making donations. It had rich parishioners leaving fortunes in their wills. It was a cash cow.
That sounds very modern. A 30-year lawsuit over prime real estate seems normal. A 300-year one is next level.
It is. And despite all that wealth, if you look at the outside of the church, it looks, well, it looks like a barn.
The source calls it a barn aesthetic.
Which is perfect.
Yeah.
Low roof, tiled stone, and timber construction. Very unassuming.
Again, keeping a low profile for the Ottomans, even in the rich neighborhood.
Exactly. Don't flaunt it on the street. Even the rich had to follow the rules of discretion. But inside, it is magnificent.
The baklava ceiling?
Yes. The wood-carved ceilings are intricate, with these geometric patterns that resemble the lozenge shapes of baklava pastry.
I can picture that.
There is gold leaf everywhere. It's a total contrast. Drab on the outside, a jewel box on the inside. A hidden treasure.
And the icons here seem to have a different flavor, too. The source highlights one of St. Modestos.
The protector of animals, a very popular saint in rural communities.
And the background isn't gold, right? Which is what you'd expect.
No, it's a landscape. A pastoral, bucolic scene with trees and animals. It shows the influence of folk art. It's much more grounded, more earthly. It connects the church to the agrarian roots of the people, even the wealthy merchants in the city. A reminder of where they came from.
And the sweet-kissing virgin.
The glycophalusa. It's a type of icon, and this one is a beautiful example. It's a very human depiction. Mary and Jesus are cheek to cheek, showing affection. It's emotional.
You can feel the relationship.
You can. It fits that softer 19th century style perfectly. It's less about awe and fear and more about love and connection.
So we have these three incredible monuments. Nea Panagia with its sound system, Laud Gigitria with its rabbit legend, and Agios Athanasios with its hidden luxury. But how do we connect this back to our Airbnb, to the Temple of PPG?
It's all about layers. And to understand the layers, you have to understand the fires.
The fires of 1890 and 1917.
Those fires were catastrophic. Especially the Great Fire of 1917. It wiped out huge swaths of the city center. It destroyed archives, homes, businesses. But every time the city burned, it rebuilt on the same footprint. The street plan changed slightly after 1917, but the nodes, the central points, they remained.
So the Temple of PPG sits on top of the ashes of the Akali pastry shop.
Which sat on top of the ashes of the Tanzimat-era merchant homes.
Which sat on top of the ashes of the Byzantine ruins.
Exactly. It's a layer cake of history, with fire as the event that clears the slate for the next layer, and the connecting thread, the icing between the layers, if you will, is adaptation.
Adaptation, explain that.
Think about it. The three hypostasis churches were built to be flexible. One room, multiple uses. They had to multitask to survive. Now look at the modern apartment.
The Temple of PPG.
It's an apartment. But for the traveler, it's a hotel. For the digital nomad, it's an office. For the couple watching Netflix, it's a cinema. We are still building three hypostasis spaces. We are still adapting our limited urban space to serve multiple needs. We just do it with Wi-Fi and modular furniture instead of three altars.
That is a fascinating parallel. We really haven't changed that much, have we?
Not really. We are still huddled in our enclaves, trying to find comfort and utility in a chaotic world. The context changes, but the human need is the same.
And there is another continuity, too, commerce.
Yes. This area has always been about trade. In the Ottoman times, the Jewish community controlled much of the commerce in this district. Then the Greek merchant class rose up and funded these churches to show their new power. Now, it's the Airbnb hosts and the high-end fashion boutiques. The currency changes, the goods change, but the transaction remains. It's still a place where value is exchanged.
And education. The source mentioned that the first girls' school started in a house in the Agios Athanasios neighborhood.
Right. The church wasn't just for prayer. It was a school, a community center, a bank, a court. It was the hub of everything. Just like the Akali pastry shop was a meeting place for professors and politicians. This neighborhood has always been a place where ideas were exchanged, where the gossip was just as important as the gospel.
It's incredible to think that when you book that Temple of PTG, you aren't just booking a room with a nice view. You're checking into a history book.
You really are. You're sleeping in the same footprint where monks hid icons from conquerors, where rabbits supposedly performed miracles, where that waiter Thanasis shouted orders in Kathravusa.
And where a fictional military doctor watched a murder unfold across the street.
Let's hope your stay is less traumatic than the novel.
Definitely. But it does make you look at an Airbnb listing differently. It's not just amenities, it's anthropology.
It is. It's a reminder that we are just the latest tenants. The building might be new, the furniture might be from IKEA, but the ground remembers everything.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about the clay pipes in the wall or the rabbit hole?
Because it enriches your experience of the world. If you walk down Palaion Patron Germanou and just see coffee shops, you are missing 90% of the reality. You are missing the struggle, the ingenuity, the stories that are vibrating right under your feet.
It changes the way you travel.
Completely. It turns a vacation into an exploration. It turns a walk to the grocery store into a time travel expedition.
And it reminds us that resilience is built into our cities. Thessaloniki has burned, it has been conquered, it has been impoverished, but it always rebuilds. It always finds a way to make space for the sacred and the social.
It's in the city's DNA.
The Temple of PPG isn't just a funny name, it's a symbol. It's a temple to the city's ability to reinvent itself.
I like that. A temple to reinvention.
So here is a provocative thought to leave you with. We talked about how the three hypostasis churches hid their true complexity behind plain walls. They looked like barns or warehouses to stay safe, but inside they were gold and acoustic marvels.
Right. The treasure was internal. The beauty was for the community, not for the outside world.
Today we live in these glass and concrete boxes. From the outside, our apartment blocks look uniform, maybe even a bit cold and anonymous. But inside, we curate these little worlds. We have our temples of relaxation, our personal sanctuaries filled with our books, our music, our lives. Are we really that different from the 18th century Thessalonians?
That's a great question. We are still hiding our treasures on the inside. We are still creating these private universes within the public shell of the city.
Right.
The threat isn't the Ottoman Empire anymore. Maybe it's just the stress of modern life, the noise, the chaos. But the solution is the same. Build a sanctuary.
Maybe that's just the human condition. We build shells to survive, and we decorate the inside to live.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that.
Next time you're booking a room in a historic city, don't just look at the thread count of the sheets. Check the street name. Dig a little deeper.
You might find a rabbit hole. Literally.
Literally. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden layers of Thessaloniki. We will see you on the next one.
Safe travels.